but we are jumping straight into Champ Select and Bans.
Yeah, we are going into the picks and bans phase here for game number 2 between MeetYourMakers and Inferno Esports. We'll see whether they stay the same, but it looks like MYM already realized they need to ban out that Draven.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't necessarily think it was the Draven pick which was ruining the lane. I think it was more the Thresh, and it's very difficult to ban out a support player. You can't say, okay, well, we've taken away his Thresh, therefore he's useless now, but there are so many supports that are very similar in how they operate, honestly, like Thresh, Leona, Annie is maybe a little bit different, but they all do the same thing. They hard engage.
And now they've changed up their bans quite a bit here for MYM. In the previous game, they were a lot more focused on general picks. This time, they've banned out Draven and Annie, which were available in the last game. And actually, MYM would play Annie. Now, that has let Elise open. And Elise, unsurprisingly, has been picked up first here by MYM.
Yeah, Elise is one of probably the most standard and reliable junglers. She goes 1 versus 1 against anyone in the jungle. She can just trade against them. She's good at counter jungling. She's good at farming the jungle. She's good at ganking. She just does everything well. And so there's no real reason not to pick her if she's available.
And now it really puts MYM at a little bit of a tricky situation here, because who do they pick in the jungle to go against that? Vi is available, but Vi doesn't trade well at all in the early game, or pretty much at most points of the game, without being incredibly ahead. So we'll see what MYM answer with, but they picked up Thresh and Gragas, which I think are very solid pickups here for MYM.
We saw the Gragas last game alongside the Thresh, in fact, from Inferno. So they're actually going to be taking that one away from them. And Gragas, again, is just one of those mid laners which does well. Even when they're behind, they still have some utility, and he has a lot of damage just built into his kit, regardless of really how well he's doing. So at least they will have that in their arsenal.
Now, it looks like Inferno want to go with the Leona. Who will they pick to go alongside that? They are Lucian is going to be the pairing there for that bottom lane, which is a very consistent bottom lane. There's a lot of engage in that lane and a lot of trading potential as well.
Yeah, basically, if you engage onto your opponent with Leona and Thresh, not Leona and Thresh, that would be a different lane, but Leona and Lucian, you're generally going to win that trade. There's very few AD carries, probably Jinx is the other one, or Caitlyn is usually the AD carry, not who can trade with Lucian, but stays so far away that you can't trade with Caitlyn.
Now, who will MYM go with? They were hovering over Sivir for that AD carry, which I think would be a good pairing. They have locked that in as well. So there's a lot of wave clear with Sivir, quite a lot of harass potential as well with the boomerangs, with Ricochet, and with Thresh alongside. They're going to be able to disengage the Leona lane fairly well. Thresh can already flay Leona backwards during the Zenith Blade animation. It's, again, another one of those little tricky skill interactions, but On the Hunt will be available as well to be able to get them away from those fights as fast as possible.
Yeah, like Leona is typically not something you would pick into a Thresh, because you would see the Thresh, and because, as you mentioned, the knockback can be very difficult to play against in lane, as you're unable to really get any engage off, because if you're taken away from the Zenith Blade, you won't be able to follow up with Shield of Daybreak, you won't be able to follow up with anything else, and then Lucian can't get in range because they've not been locked down. So it's really going to come down to the skill of these players in the bot lane.
Now, taking a look at mid lane, Syndra has been locked in. Now, Syndra is a champion that has insane burst at level 6. She is probably, I think she is the highest burst champion in the game with that unleashed power ultimate, which will deal massive damage to a Gragas. So they've got to be a little bit careful around that level 6 mark. Both mid laners will become really quite potent at that level 6. And Shyvana has been locked in alongside Syndra for that top lane. And with Renekton already locked in for MYM, that means we aren't likely to see a Trundle pickup here as a counter, which would be a fairly normal pick against Shyvana.
Yeah, so we'll see exactly what they decide to lock in. I'm not expecting a Malzahar here.
No,
okay.
I'm unless it's Jungle Gragas, actually.
Yeah.
If it's Jungle Gragas, that would allow a pick like LeBlanc to be picked up here. And Jungle Gragas is something that has been played, I believe, by MYM as well. I think I've seen them play it, which, provides a lot of difference in their picks and bans phase, because picking up Gragas this early on really allows you to be fairly ambiguous here, and I wouldn't be too surprised to see that LeBlanc picked up here.
Yeah, we have seen a couple Gragases in different positions, sometimes in the top lane, sometimes in the jungle. And because Renekton's already picked up, it could be a multitude of things. Nidlee's going to be locked in. Okay, so typically we do see a lot more LeBlanc than we do Syndra, because LeBlanc does something very similar in terms of burst, but it's just easier. It's more reliable as a pick. Sometimes you don't have to have a flashy kit to make it good.
Okay, but the difference here on the teams is the amount of wave clear and ability to siege. You look at the team composition here for MYM, they have an amazing siege potential. They've got Nidalee, they've got Gragas, they've got Sivir. They can burn waves very, very quickly and output high damage behind turrets. Then you look at the side of Inferno, and their actual wave clear is pretty much reduced to Syndra's Q, which has a very small radius, and Shyvana sitting in lane with Burnout, and then Lucian being able to use Piercing Light. And Piercing Light's not the best wave clear. It will deal damage to all of the minions, but not exactly high damage. Right. Not the same as the Sivir. So their ability to push waves back is actually quite reduced here.
We see that quite a lot in the current meta, Stress, where we see teams who are just so good at sieging and so good at control when it comes to keeping those towers alive or taking down those turrets, that the opposing team, okay, they have a great team fight and they get like 10, 15k gold ahead, but they're unable to really close out the game because they just disengage so well. They counter all the minions, and you cannot siege against a Sivir. Even if it's just Sivir, 1 versus 5, no minion wave, unless you're tanky enough with someone like Mundo, then you won't be able to jump straight in there.
And it's very difficult to engage on a Gragas as well, especially a Gragas Sivir, because you get that disengage using explosive cast, you use on the hunt as well to get yourselves out of the fight. So it's going to be difficult for Inferno to actually catch on in the mid-game team fights here with MYM.
Yeah, they won't be able to find the team fights that they want with this type of composition. And even if they do get ahead, we're going to have the same situation, Stress, where, okay, yeah, they're maybe 10k ahead like we saw in the last game, but they won't be able to close it out. But we saw the team surrender because they were just so far behind. They were getting engaged upon, but they won't be able to dive those turrets. They have a lot of damage underneath there, so it's not something they can really go for.
And the question is, will we see the 1v1 or a 2v1 situation here, and the 2v2s, which, will be led from a 1v1, which, is something that I'm expecting here with these lane matchups. Leona really suffers in a 1v2 situation. She is not amazing because her push potential is pretty slow. And when you get a chance to engage, it's typically under a turret. And engaging under a turret, as we saw in game number 1 for MYM, is not something that's really effective in the early game, unless you know you can get the kill.
Absolutely. So we do have another 1 minute 30 left on the delay. So now's a good time to talk about the FACEIT platform. And we are, opening up with the first League of Legends tournament from FACEIT, the Invitational. And if you do want to get involved with all the action, then there is a promotional code that you can enter into the platform. If you just go onto the FACEIT website, you can enter that for, I believe it's a month premium, so you can use all the features on FACEIT.
Yes, you'll get your premium membership unlocked for the month there, and that means you get access to the premium prizes as well. Of course, playing on the FACEIT platform in any of the daily tournaments will earn you FACEIT points, which can then be, I believe, redeemed for some pretty awesome prizes. Everything from keyboards, headsets to, I believe, Fnatic have actually provided a shirt that'll be signed, with the grand prize being a car.
Yeah.
So getting a car from playing video games is pretty cool.
I mean, it's absolutely free, and as you said, you're just playing video games and you get a car. So it's not quite as simple as that, because you do have to earn 5 million points.
Yeah,
but it's something you can definitely earn.
But the thing is, it's available to everybody. Yeah. It doesn't matter what skill level you're at, whether you're a bronze like Pulse. Sorry. Okay, whether you're a bronze player or whether you're a challenger player, it's available to everybody. So Pulse is going to be so mad.
Yeah, you don't want to see what's going to happen in the break. But we do have 5 seconds left before we head on to the loading screen, so we will be jumping into this game very soon, and we haven't spoken too much about the Syndra. We don't see Syndra too much in competitive play.
Unless you're Bjergsen.
Unless you're Bjergsen, okay. But we can kind of remove him, because there are some champions...
He's gone to NA now. We can just,
we don't even acknowledge him anymore in Europe. But there are some champions who are only basically viable because you are a person. Like, if you have, like, Akali, unless you're Westrice, then it's generally not going to be viable. If you're playing Syndra, then you're Bjergsen. If you're playing Evelynn, then if you're Diamond Proxen, don't even attempt it.
Well, Syndra is quite a high skill cap champion. That's not to say that the players aren't able to play Syndra, but you really have to dedicate quite a lot of games to being able to play Syndra at the highest level and really be able to be very potent, because her stun is one of the most difficult to land in the game. You have to cast Q and then follow it up with the E in the right direction at the right length, at the right distance from Syndra to make sure it goes the correct distance. And it's just one of those things that if you're feeling comfortable enough to play Syndra in a competitive environment, that means I'm going to look forward to you playing Syndra in a competitive environment, because this should be pretty interesting to see how Dr. Matt does decide to play out with this Syndra.
Absolutely, and we'll see exactly how he does against Nidalee. I mean, Nidalee is a lane which necessarily doesn't do too well in the early levels against a lot of mid laners, because the method of harassing is basically that spear, and because there's minions, and there are minions in League of Legends, and you can't necessarily land all of those, but we are going to be jumping into game between Inferno and MYM for the second game of this best of 3.
I am looking forward to this one so much. We'll see whether MYM can bounce back into this as well, because they're going to need a strong performance here, because they need to win 2 back-to-back to be able to take home the win here in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, and they're running Gragas jungle, which is not necessarily a bad pick, but it's a pick that is not as consistent as other junglers. And we were saying, well, we would like to see MYM pull something out that is way more consistent, something that they are definitely comfortable with, and bringing on Gragas jungle, while it could be strong, is risky when you're up against a wall.
Oh, and Makla's being risky in the bottom lane.
Yeah, Keelan's just heading on forwards, didn't commit a point into anything just yet, and wants to jump onto Makla, especially with anyone being around that corner.
Makla's got enough time to regenerate up from that, so it's not the end of the world there. It's much better that he didn't die. A death there would have been catastrophic for them and may have signaled a very similar game to game number 1. But that tell really is just that it looks like we're going to get the 2v2s to begin this game off.
Yeah, and it didn't burn any summons either, so by just going back to base, healing up, and coming back into the bottom lane, it's not going to make any difference at all here, Stress. So all these guys are going to fan out very similar to the first game.
Yeah, they will take defensive starts here to begin this one, and we'll see exactly how this pays off for MYM. Of course, Gragas in the jungle, as you said, isn't quite as consistent as, a potential other jungle picks, but I think against an Elise, it's actually fairly decent here, because the escapability of Gragas is pretty good. He's also able to trade kind of okay by the fact that you'll get pretty good resistance and extra damage from his different kits from Happy Hour and from the regeneration that he'll get from that.
Yeah, and what makes Elise so strong in the jungle is because she can trade up against basically all those jungles. And Gragas, if he's not liking the trade, then he can just get out of there with Body Slam, the Flash as well. And usually Flash may not be enough to get you away from Elise because of Repel. So Gragas should be able to get away from that. Again, Libic, or already Libic, jumps onto Bonnie, putting down that aggression. Keela just throwing down the auto attacks, increases the vision, just plopping down that ward, and just going to go back to laning phase. That was a great hook to start the phase off.
Yeah, that's a good trade here for MYM, as they have put Lucian somewhat on the back foot here. You can see Civi's effect of pushing in already showing and coming to fruition, as they're already shoving Inferno in towards the tower. I think MYM, after picking the double smite in game number 1, they're going to take this one a lot more to heart.
So Vanez in the top lane, just pushing around Kuban, which is to be expected in the Shyvana Renekton lane, even though we had the nerfs to Shyvana very recently in the most recent patch. It hasn't really affected her viability against a Renekton lane up there.
Yeah, we saw Gragas trying to invade there. You might have caught it on the minimap. Didn't really get into a position where he could invade on Elise's blue buff. Did ward over the wall, but neither jungler really committed to that. Both mid laners headed towards it, but already MYM showing they want to be aggressive in the jungle.
Typically when your Gragas will scrap that because bot lane engagement comes out. Keela just putting down the hurt onto Libic, just pushing them away, and a hook will land in turn, doesn't choose to follow up, and just kind of some friendly love taps in the bottom lane.
Meanwhile, top lane, it's a little bit early without being able to get a lot of damage on Kuban to gank that one, but at least looking for any kind of picks here. But we've seen most junglers head towards the bottom lane as their lane of choice. Now, Gragas is only just getting over to his blue buff, so he's a little bit delayed on picking that one up. But it does, however, mean that he will have somewhat of an obscure gank path here, as he will hit the bottom lane at a bit of a unique time.
Something they may not necessarily expect, and because those wards haven't gone up, they are being pushed back to that turret. Let's see if they can go for this tower dive, and he might just head all the way around and attempt to gank on Syndra. But these lanes aren't great for either of these junglers to go for, unless they are the bottom lane, as you mentioned before, Stress.
He crossed the ward into the mid lane and will try and engage.
He's going to give this a go, but gets stunned out by Scal of the Week, and will just kind of wander back into his jungle.
Now, one difference here by picking Syndra in the current meta game in mid, hook does land.
Again, Libic lands it, but again, doesn't choose to follow up on it, but Keela will. There's the play. That is exactly why you pick Fresh into Leona. Meanwhile, in the mid lane, though, Agua and Makana found themselves caught. Dr. Matt going to be flashing out, and that's first blood for Elise.
Massive damage coming out there, and there's engage again in the bottom lane.
That's going to be blocked up by the spell shield. Keller again jumping out. Makler will follow up. We'll see which support dies first. It will be both of them. Now both of the AD carries are going to meet each other. Those caster minions are still wailing on Bonnie, but Makler's dropping so low. He's going to be juking back in, trying to get this next swing of the boomerang blades out, but both barriers popped and neither of these guys fall.
Neither AD carry falls there, but there's massive damage out in all of these lanes. Elise comes in for the gank. Spell shields off.
Spell shield onto the venomous bite, but that won't block the spiraling and the auto attack.
And that's the product of Gragas falling. His effect to counter gank there against Elise just was non-existent. He wasn't around, and Inferno once again off to a good start in this game.
Yeah, this time MYM are running a composition which is definitely more conventional, and still they're behind 3-1. Just Inferno looking incredibly strong.
Okay, so Inferno's Syndra pick, I was going to mention this earlier. Syndra is less able to survive in a gank situation without landing a good stun on multiple people, whereas Nidalee, as soon as she hits level 6, will be able to, use Cougar form to jump away. But ganking for a Nidalee in the early game is very difficult. So Syndra is somewhat safe in that lane, and you already saw that they weren't able to gank them.
Yeah, McKenna has walked all the way up to the top lane. Vanya's not in good shape. Kubon following up. The Coldmeat comes across. Ignite comes down. That should be enough by itself. Hell Potion comes out. Flash into the auto tackle will secure that kill for Kubon.
And Kubon will feel somewhat secure there in his lane now with that kill as well. We'll be able to go back and use that extra gold to make sure he's picking up the itemization to go against Shyvana. Now, bottom lane is just trade central here, as both teams just really looking to engage on each other, but it's mid that has the fight.
Chu follows up the flash from Agua, doesn't land the cocoon, will be landing on that back line of caster minions, and Nidalee should be away from this one. That's the Cougar form coming to its full potential.
Yeah, that right there is exactly why Nidalee is difficult to gank after 6, even with Repel not able to catch up.
Yeah, just can't get anywhere close. And pings go down onto Elise, that you know exactly where that jungler is. There's a flay backwards, and the pause comes in at the worst possible moment of the bot lane.
Yeah, that's not the best time to pause that, but hopefully that will all be sorted out by the players. Hopefully it'll only be a very short little pause for this, but that is a crucial time for the game to be paused on.
Yeah, I mean, the bot lane has been trading so often, Stress, that they may just back off. I mean, so often we have these pauses and they're just like, oh, well, we haven't thought about it, so we're just going to back on off.
This time, neither Libic nor Makler actually have flash available, and they're not level 6 yet, so On the Hunt and the Box aren't available to disengage either. They are fairly close to their turret, so will be able to get away, but it's how much damage will they take before getting away from this fight, because if they get pushed out, we've already talked about how low health low resistance the bottom lane towers are. If there can be a good push on out of Inferno, they might get some good damage onto that turret.
Yeah, they're already leading in these kill stress and already looking very good in this game, but apparently we are going to jump straight back into the action in the second game between Inferno Esports and MeetYourMakers.
And as expected, always with a pause, both teams sportsmanlike conduct with a disengage there from that one.
Absolutely. So Chuyu and Dr. Matt just going toe-to-toe, but just kind of hanging around the Nidalee. Unleashed Power comes through just to make sure he won't tower dive him, but Dr. Matt not having a fun time against Nidalee.
Yeah, needs to find himself a good place to recall as well, because against the Nidalee, you don't want to recall just behind your turret, because those spears will come out and try and find a predictable recall place.
Okay, so all these teams just going to go back to laning phase. Agua, in the meantime, we didn't even notice, is starting to take down the dragon. And that will be the first dragon of the game, going straight to Elise.
I was about to comment on that, the fact that Elise is actually fairly good at soloing dragon. The percentage damage and the ability for spiderlings to tank means that even in the early game, you're able to offset the damage that dragon does and output a lot more damage onto it. The percentage damage, skittering frenzy, just overall, that is why Elise, again, another reason for Elise to be strong.
All these guys just kind of trading against each other. So let's take a look at some of the item builds. Some of these guys have gone back to base and picked up their first rotation of items. So challenge picked up by both of these mid lane, which is again fairly conventional. The double Duran's ring just gives them a little bit of extra AP. But in the mid lane, we've seen Nidalee actually out-trading that Syndra. And that's typically not what you expect from that lane.
I think that at that point, you got to look at the positions in lane. It's whether the spears are landing. Now that they've hit level 6, there is engage in the top lane. But top laners being top laners, it's not going to lead to anything. In that middle lane, as soon as you hit 6, your ability to catch up on Syndra is actually fairly good. you can jump forward and use the swipe, but the hook lands.
Yeah, Box comes out as well. Makler is just following up the auto-attacks. Libic gets the flay, but Mercado has come back in, pins his target against the wall, but Makler and Keeler are still going at it. It's going to take a while to chunk down the armor and resistance of Keeler. There's the boomerang blade and picks that one up, but Mercado was unable to do anything else. Another amazing hook comes in. Bonnie, unable to get away, has to just go and trade against Mercado.
And Chuyu had rotated as well, so there was no way that Inferno were getting out of that one alive. MYM will now push on towards the turret. Dragon not available, as Elise had already taken that one down. So that's a good pickup here by MYM. It doesn't actually look like they want to stay.
Interesting. I mean, typically when you get those kills, you'll take another objective on top of that, but it looks like they're looking for another objective, which is the Dragon, which is not available.
Nidalee rotated through Dragon.
Right.
Chuyu saw that Dragon wasn't available.
Maybe there wasn't any communication. Maybe it was like he walked past and was like, oh yeah, Dragon's not there. I guess I would inform my team about it, and maybe that's why they rotated. Or maybe they're trying to keep up the lane. But either way, it's a choice we don't usually see from these guys.
Yeah, I feel like if they were trying to keep them in the lanes, it would have been better for them to just back and buy items. Because, as I said, they knew that Dragon wasn't available. So again, it might just be a little lack of communication there between these guys. Just not quite on the the top form of communication that we've seen MYM be on again and again.
It's still quite early in the day. I mean, it's not normal waking time for gamers, so we're just a little bit sluggish. But either way, these guys are still ahead in this game. MeetYourMakers, we didn't talk about the gold swing, are still slightly ahead. And that's going to be AE Carry just walking back into lane, using that lantern as a free express train.
Now, they'll be able to clear this one pretty quickly. You can see Makler, when he does decide to use Ricochet and the Boomerang, will clear through, but they'd rather, by the looks of it, keep Inferno in that lane for as long as possible. They do have a CS advantage and are trading very well in that lane, but here comes another.
They're going for the engage. Aggro has arrived in the bottom lane, but the counter gag's already available from Makata. There's the barrel, knocks two into the tower. Let's see if they can mop them up. Makler picks up one. Eventually going to be going to Makata. On the hunt has been used. This is now cleanup time. Bonnie is still wailing against a great spell shield, right in time for the Shield of Daybreak. Now Bonnie tries to get this last kill, but he jukes into it. Barrier comes up. Makata is still following down. The barrier is still on cooldown for Bonnie. Just needs one more auto attack from Makler. There it is. And there's the clean sweep from MYM.
Bonnie cancelled the culling in the middle of that engagement. There was no minions to block, so he just had to position. But the problem is, Makata was really raining down on him as quickly as possible, landing massive amounts of damage after an amazing explosive cast, knocking two into the turret.
It was slightly out of time because Libic did drop, but it forced him to fully commit to that engage to make sure they got that kill. Now Chuyu aggressing onto Dr. Matt, not in good shape, looking for that last takedown to take him into the death chamber, but Acura looks for the counter gang. The cocoon doesn't quite connect, and Chuyu looks for more spears.
Agua's been really good on his positioning in this series, not just this game, but the game previously as well. He's been in the right place at the right times, has really been using the map to his advantage as well, taking away the dragon on his own. And you can see this one is a lot closer than the previous game was at 12 minutes. This time, MYM are the team in the lead. At about 1,500 is the gold lead, but MYM need to really secure that for themselves. But as we head into the mid-game, their team composition definitely favors MYM.
And talking about being in the right place at the right time, that's something that, well, as Dragon's Intent is using the top lane, but not too much going to happen there. That's something that has really taken MYM off guard, because Inferno have always been having great rotations, as we see Elise just zoning Chuyu away from that ward. It's even small things like that that you just don't expect from a team is, well, not necessarily as new as Inferno, but definitely the team who are not the favorites to win the series.
Now, Shyvana against Renekton in this top lane. The nerfs to Shyvana have really reduced the damage, but here comes the bottom lane gank.
On the hunt, once again used at the start of this fight. Mercado gets locked down for a good 4 seconds with that chain CC. The counter gank comes in from Agua. He will be picking up one. Makler picks up another kill in return. Agua trying to get himself back to the turret. Bonnie doesn't even turn around for auto attacks. Doesn't want to look behind him. Chuyu's rotated from the middle lane. And so has Dr. Matt. Unleashed Power is going to rain down onto Libic. There's the Null Sphere. In fact, he's not cast him. There goes the Dark Sphere.
Picks it up with the Dark Sphere. Picks up the kill for himself. But that was really nice rotations by both mid laners to get down there in time. Ooh, those spears are going to start doing quite a bit of damage. But you can see how long Makata got locked down for in that fight. Just far, far too much crowd control.
It was a good 4 seconds he was just standing in place. That's what Leona can bring to a fight, if not just trying to land that engagement to several people, keep one single target locked down.
Okay, so I was mentioning about Shyvana Renekton here in this top lane a little bit earlier. Now, Shyvana's had nerfs to her damage, so she's a little bit less able to trade with the tankier and damage top laners. The problem with that is you used to build Blade of the Ruined King when ahead on Shyvana or as a second item, but to get more damage out of this build, Vanes is actually built towards Blade of the Ruined King first, and he's trading very inefficiently against Renekton, who's gone Tiamat first. Renekton's going to have a lot of damage, and through his ultimate, he's going to get that extra health and sustainability, whereas Shyvana, her damage has been reduced, and it is having to compensate for that.
And plus, because she's behind in that lane, it's not meant that Shyvana can just stay on top of Renekton. Because you mentioned before, if you're ahead in that lane, great. You can just stay on top of your lane opponent, and they can never fight you, and you could just sit behind the turret, carry on farming, and you draw pressure away from the jungler. But that initial kill has really just changed the dynamics of that lane. So it's not too much that Elise can really do in that lane, because Shyvana doesn't offer too much to a gank, especially against someone like Renekton.
Yeah, it's difficult. You see Kuban will go aggressive, uses the Tiamat trick. Now, what you just saw there was if you stun and use the Tiamat active, you can actually animation cancel and then use Slice and Dice as well. So really to catch up with your opponent as fast as possible after the stun. You secure the additional dice after your Slice.
Yeah, it increases the damage instantly. It's more burst than you expect from a Renekton, especially with the extra damage from that Tiamat. So, Kuban just trying to see down the turret, but Vanes in a 1v1 situation underneath the turret can do pretty well. Plus the AoE damage from Tiamat will mean that it will aggro onto him.
Yeah, and you can see blue being given over to Chuyu. That's, pretty useful on an Italy. You can throw those spears out more often, get that massive damage away. And MYM is starting to control the vision as best as possible. Now, on the current patch, of course, Oracles hasn't been in the game for a few months now, so it's pretty difficult to clear all of the wards, but Agua has just walked into the box.
Agua gets caught. Makana comes across from a huge, long-range lantern. Makla follows up. Repel comes up. There's nowhere really to go. He's going to have to come back down, and Makla will claim that kill.
Nowhere to go for that one, indeed. Makla becomes unstoppable at 6-1. This is almost a mirror of the first game. Chuyu got stunned, but it won't result in much more in the mid.
Dr. Matt not quite doing the damage that he really wants to go for that 4 combo. Vanes, again, just uses Dragon Descent in a bit of a tricky situation against Kuban. Just going to be using that ultimate to get out of dodge.
Now, the problem with this game for Inferno is the fact that all of the kills are stacked on to Elise.
They've gone for the gank, but that was a kill has been completely interrupted by Flame. Makana jumps out of the bus, but Cutting chunks down Living before anything else happens. Shiyu arrives and doesn't get the assist, but Bonnie underneath this turret. Makla's going to be the one tanking this up. Shiyu will follow up, and that's the mid lane rotation. Unleashed Power gets the shutdown. 500 gold going to Syndra. Chuyu and Makana in enemy lines, but gets the kill before going down. Dr. Mal will surely secure this. Barrier comes out. There's Scatter the Weak. And Gragas will be quite light on his toes for a fat man.
Dr. Matt has been rotating very, very well. This is very similar to what you see out of, a Syndra, the levels of Bjergsen, by the fact that he's really just following his lane opponent. And it is not that easy to follow a Nidalee, especially as a Syndra. Have to get that stun right, and every time has landed.
It's not like Nidalee can turn around and just go toe-to-toe either. It's like you start getting followed. It's like, well, I have to carry on going to this lane because if I turn around, I'm going to die. So that's exactly why Syndra is so strong right now. Okay, we're going to take a look at that last engage once again.
Yeah, so as you can see, here comes the hook to begin this fight off. The Zenith Blade didn't quite land, neither did the Solar Flare. But here comes the culling into Thresh, takes Libic down to begin that one off. Forced to take a spear, followed by the explosive cast. The turret here tanking a lot of damage is Makla, and actually takes a good few too many turret shots. Stun lands out of Dr. Matt to pick up that kill as he came into lane. Chuyu chasing, again very deep, but nice positioning on the barrel, overlapping with the spear there. And that's just clinical to finish off that kill there by Dr. Matt.
That was an unbelievably good spear then. It was right between the minions, and as his ally was rotating, Chuyu gets caught. There's the unleashed power. He might be able to get this. The last spear lands, and Dr. Matt 1v1s him. Miwa at top lane. Kuban drops. Makata. There's the flash forwards into the barrel.
Maximum range barrel on that one. The explosion of beer, in fact, is it I think it's beer in this case. Depends on
No,
which
what
skin
skin is
he's
he running?
running. I think it might be wine, actually, but the alcohol just, flowing
alcohol.
over Shyvana to pick up that kill.
Okay, so in the bottom lane, again, these guys going toe-to-toe, but 6-2 and 3 is the current scoreline from Mac, who's actually opted towards the static shiv as well, on top of the Bloodthirster, which is going to result in some early extra damage and even more wave play, even though I'm sure Sivir probably doesn't need it.
What do I need? More wave play. Let's go static shift. But that's not too... as we head into the mid game, that's where Sivir's strengths are going to be here. The ability to clear waves incredibly quickly using Ricochet and the Boomerang Blade is just so strong in the current meta. The ability to push and siege is something that certain champions in the meta actually lack, and Sivir just really covers up for a lot of the weaknesses.
Libic again going for the engage, the flay into the box combination. Culling comes across, doesn't quite find its mark. The hook gets duped by Keenan, he goes for the re-engage. Acua has come down, but the support has already dropped, and this is not a fight they're looking for. The call was made, and both the mid laners have found themselves in the bottom lane.
Yeah, this time the numbers favor MYM. They lost nobody in that engagement, and Dragon is coming up in 15 seconds, so that really is the position that MYM are looking for. Even better for them, Kubon has pushed onto this top tower, will take that one down as the Dragon spawns.
We'll see which of these teams can go after it. The last Dragon, we didn't quite catch it, but it went to MYM, and we'll see what they can do about this. So Dragon has now spawned, and it doesn't look like we're going to see any reaction from Inferno.
There's not too much they can do here. Leona's only just respawned, and if MYM look to push that Dragon fairly soon, which they are doing now, as Makler tries to engage onto Lucian. They're taking down this Dragon, but Elise is here.
They're going to give it an attempt. Who can win this fight? Well, it's going to be Agua, despite MYM being all over that one.
Yeah, Agua just kind of ran in because MYM gave them the position to do so, and it just looked like the Battle of the Smite War. Makata smited a little too early.
And quite early, there was no one zoning away the top half of the river, so they just went for that engagement. But Bonnie, there's no way to go. That bush has been warded. He knows exactly where he's going. Makler has the minion wave there, so Agua's going to find it quite hard to land anything else. But Dr. Matt will follow up, and Leona. There's no way Makler's going to get out, but might be able to get a kill in return. They still haven't taken the route. They actually backed off, and that was not enough damage.
That was so close to being a kill for Makler because Dr. Matt, that's the first stun I've seen him miss as he came into that lane. Wasn't able to pick that up with the stun from Syndra, but it has sacrificed the middle turret here as MYM pick themselves up another objective. They lost Dragon, but overall in that trade will pick up that mid turret.
So a ton of kills on the AD carry and a ton of kills on the jungler, in fact, of Brachus. And because he doesn't have that constant gold stream that you would necessarily have in the lane stress, he's not going to be dealing as much damage despite those kills. He might get himself towards a Rabadons, but that's going to be the blue buff falling. Dr. Matt still following after Kuban, trying to get that blue buff back. Vanas jumps in with the Dragon Descent. Lantern comes through from Libic, and they should be out of here.
Yeah, the Lantern, the Dark Passage, is a very good tool for getting away from danger. Of course, seeing it in good effect. There's spears. Ooh, not quite landing on Bonnie in the bottom lane. That would have been a massive spear.
It would, but again, they've gone for the engagement, still in the dragon form, still tanking that turret. Dr. Matt is still in that top lane. Makata following up, doesn't have anything to offer, and Kuban is just hanging around, seeing if he can lock someone down. Agua will be jumping up, using that repel. Makler's come in from the bottom lane somehow. For some reason, there's an AD carry in that lane. Agua jumps into the bush, jumps back in, tries to use Venomous Bite to pick up a kill before he drops to Makler.
And I thought for a second that Dr. Matt had been saved by Libic mid-animation from Explosive Cask as he was getting pushed back. Libic landed a hook and actually animation cancelled the knockback for a second, so they didn't quite get the damage down. However, Inferno are putting a lot of damage down onto this bottom turret, and MYM had themselves a somewhat favorable trade in the top half of the map, but they've got to be careful they don't start losing objectives here.
It's going to be the bottom tower falling, and that's exactly what we said. It was fairly unusual to see an AD carry ganking in the top lane, and that's exactly why that tower fell. So Nidalee finding herself in the bottom lane, going to clear out that minion wave before going anywhere else. So that's going to be MeetYourMakers in a slight advantage. 1.3k, not going to be huge, but still ahead in this game.
There's a lot of difference on the AD carries. Overall, you look at the farm, 50 is the advantage that Makler has, and 7 extra kills. That's so much of that gold lead is so focused on the AD carries that really we're going to see Makler have just a massive, massive effect in these team fights, whereas it looks like Bonnie's just not going to be able to output nearly as much damage.
And likewise, the junglers have a lot of kills focused on them compared to the other lanes. In the mid lane, however, Dr. Matt looking very good, 5-1 and 3. Got both of those big damage items completed already. That's the core of most mid laners. Valis in the top lane, training against Kubon, doesn't need to use his ultimate just yet, but this is the classic rotation from a severe-based team where you just go from lane to lane, looking to push down the minion waves and see if you can pick up a turret on top of that.
Yeah, so Ricochet and Boomerang Blade actually clear a wave through on their own.
Yeah.
So Sivir doesn't even require any input from the rest of her team. Stun does land. Can they land a hook?
Libic gets the hook, the death sentence on Tequila, doesn't choose to jump underneath the turret. Chuyu jumps away using Pounce. Gets out of the line of culling, but that's not going to be used to wave clear. And now we're in the situation we were talking about in Champion Select Stress, where we have the team of Inferno not really able to clear out these waves as well as MeetYourMakers, and over time they should be ground down.
And MYM were able to disengage that without using any of their ultimates or disengage tools. And that's really just a sign of how far away these two teams need to be for Inferno to survive through this, is that they cannot engage.
I mean, individually, most of those champions from MeetYourMakers are quite maneuverable. Like, apart from maybe Libic, who's going to be a little bit slower, but at some point may pick up a coin, all those champions can get out of dodge by themselves.
Yeah, he has opted for the Spectre's Cowl, so that extra regeneration and magic resist when under attack is going to be pretty nice, but the Solar Flare lands.
Solar Flare comes down onto Chuyu. There's their flay backwards. Box in a perfect position. Allows the back line to be completely safe. They rip apart the front line from Inferno. Double kill comes out for Renekton. Dr. Matt has to escape. Perfect. Scatter the weak onto 3 members, but there's a triple kill coming down for Kubon. 4-0. MeetYourMakers go huge in the mid lane.
That was a really nice fight by MYM. Yes, they got locked down. Chuyu got locked down by the Solar Flare. Culling back off cooldown, so we'll be able to deal some damage, but it's not enough to deter MYM's siege composition. So MYM got Chuyu locked down in that fight, but then all of the ultimates were popped. They managed to maneuver around, and although they didn't disengage, that extra movement speed and the disruption on Inferno just meant that MYM could fight in the same position. We've got a replay of the fight coming up for you, and you'll see this in action. Here comes the Solar Flare, lands onto Chuyu, who gets stunned in place. A brilliant play in the box. The Dragon's Descent didn't disrupt anybody in that fight, and MYM got themselves into a position to fight this one and start landing massive damage. A great stun out of Dr. Matt locks down a lot of the damage, but it's far too late for him to survive that one, and that was just really a power play by MYM.
Libic's Fresh is always just amazing to watch. I think Libic is the first player I saw on Fresh to flay a Lee Sin while he was in flight. I think you were casting that game with
yes,
me, weren't
I
you?
was.
And it was at a right angle from where he was flying. Absolutely incredible. And that box really won them that fight.
And that was a little bit of a mistimed back by MYM because they got the fight there. The Dragon was up just after they had to back. If they hadn't have backed and had gone for Dragon, they risked Inferno actually taking another fight. And that time, MYM would have been lower with no ultimates, couldn't have fought it. So MYM say, okay, we'll give you this Dragon, but we'll take more objectives. We'll go and itemize a little bit better.
Just saw Renekton hanging around the blue buff, but this time he isn't running that smite, so he won't be able to steal that one away. Libic gets caught. We sung him praises, but he's the one who's going to get taken down. A lot of ultimates used for that pleasure, but still 1-for-0 trades, and Inferno going to try and push their advantage.
The problem is, I don't think Libic is actually the biggest part of this wave. Well, he's not the biggest part of this wave clear at all. I don't even think he's a big part of their disengage here should Inferno choose to pick this up. He's good at picking somebody off, but having on the hunt the explosive cask available as well means Inferno are going to really struggle to push this tower in, because as soon as Makler just starts throwing out auto attacks, there's no way here they can push in on this turret.
Great you got a pick, but it's not anyone significant, and you have to basically kill Makata and Makler to make sure you can push a turret, because even if one of those guys are alive, okay, well, Explosive Cast comes down. That's an ultimate you can just throw away as the jungler at this stage. He's got the extra cooldown reduction, and if Sivir is alive, then that's going to be cleared indefinitely. MeetYourMakers going to go for an attempt onto Baron. Ping comes down. That's only MeetYourMakers aware of this. Libic going to be hanging around, might be seen by one of these guys. A ping, in fact, comes down. Dr. Matt and Chuyu going at it in the bottom lane. Huge heal comes out. Valiant has realized exactly what MeetYourMakers are up to. Accurate hanging around, and so Kilo goes for the engagement by himself. He has no real backup. Max was kiting him away. No one has decided to go in, and that was a call that was just completely mistimed. Both of these guys going in by one. One kill goes onto support. Bonnie has finally arrived, flashes out straight into the explosive cats. Acua has also come into this fight, and Chuyu has come all the way from the bottom lane. This has taken so long. Coupon uses the Spiralings to get the slice and dice reset, and Chuyu gets caught. Dr. Matt comes in, does incredible damage. Bonnie with the light slinger picks up 1 kill, and that was a 1-for-1, in fact a 2-for-1 trade overall.
Yeah, neither team secured the Baron there, and the whole reason that MYM could go for the Baron at that point in the game, as Bonnie's getting taken very low by Makler, was because Libic got picked. Because Libic got picked, Inferno chose to try and push the middle lane instead of clearing top and bottom. That meant that Vanes had to clear top. Hook does land onto the Wraith.
Onto the white.
I was
got a kill.
I was looking at Pulse casting that. They had to clear top and bottom, which meant they were split across the map. And that allowed MYM to focus on the Baron. Yes, they didn't achieve the Baron in the end of all things, and they only got 2-for-1, which is still advantageous for them. But it just means that MYM are pretty much in the heads of Inferno now, because Inferno are starting to question how they can start to close this game out. If they have to, to level the game and then close the game out.
And it's not even looking likely that they can equalize anytime soon. We saw one pick, they couldn't see the turret. They went towards the Baron. It's like, well, if that's as close we're going to get to their base, then what are we going to do about the rest of this game?
I don't feel like I need to cast Chuyu killing the white quite as excitedly as
the hook did land. And
yeah, the hook landed. So.
Yeah. I mean, it was a stationary target.
Those ones are pretty easy to hit, I hear.
You know, funny enough, in fact, we're going to go off that point because Keeler's just jumped over the wall by himself. Solar Flare comes down. They do not want to be focusing Libic. He's not the main threat. Makto is way ahead of his team, and that was in fact the Dark Sphere going straight past the ear of Makler. Had that landed, that would have been completely disastrous because he is what matters to their composition.
And you can see here the comfortability by MYM. They'll send Renekton and Nidalee to make sure the lanes are pushing, which means that if Inferno chose to engage in that middle lane, they have the explosive cask available. On the Hunt had just been used, but Flash is still available on Sivir, which means they can disengage from that. The Buck's available as well. They're comfortable disengaging in a 3v5 situation.
I feel like we've been making up words here, Stress, because we're just like adding ability onto most other words like comfortability. I'm not even sure if that's in the English dictionary.
I think it is.
Is it?
I hope it is.
Oh.
If not, it is now. We've added it in the hook
caster dictionary, but Agua backs off to the mid lane, and the barrel, I think it connected. It didn't do very much damage if it did.
Yeah, not a bit. I would expect it to do more damage than that. I don't think it quite connected. But again, MYM find themselves a place on the map to pick up another objective. They're spreading Inferno out the map as thin as possible. And really, that just is going to keep favoring MYM because it's so difficult for Inferno to engage.
They do not want to be spreading MYM like butter because they were... That face from Stress. But they're not able to push down any of these lanes because individually they can push out all of these turrets by themselves. Makler just needs to be there. One versus like a 3-man stack, which is very typical when you're at this stage in the game. He'll be able to completely repel. So can Makata and even Renekton to some extent.
Ooh, Chuyu landing damage onto Bonnie there. Yeah, Chuyu's starting to put out quite a bit of damage. Has himself that Rabadons and the Athenes. And again, like... There's so little way for Inferno to engage in these fights that MYM are just rotating around, pushing every lane, getting as many objectives around the map as they'd like. And yes, they've only got 5,000 gold lead, but without a big fight, Inferno are going to struggle.
Libic is getting chunked down from just the general poke from Inferno. This is starting to heat up, but every time they try and take the blue buff, it's them stealing away with Force of Will. There's a hook landing onto Agua. Probably the perfect target at the stage. Box comes down, Repel comes up, goes very aggressive, and Vanes has jumped onto that back line. It's a complete split-up team fight. That's going to be Leona dropping and the entire bot lane from Inferno. Dr. Matt just evacuates. Triple kill once again for Kubon. There's the 4th kill for the Quadra. See if he can mop up the 5th. Dr. Matt's going to head back to base, and he's quite a happy crocodile.
What a Quadra kill there for Renekton. Just outputting so much damage in a team composition that should really outdamage Renekton. Dr. Matt is now going to get dived out by Makler and Chuyu.
Chuyu looks for the takedown. In fact, it's going to be Makler getting that kill. There's the ace. Baron will go down, and we've got the push from the rest of those
This is going to be
players.
Baron and an inhibitor here at the same time. It's not often that you see a team pick up Baron and an inhibitor in stereo.
Yeah, and they're going to head up to the Baron. They're actually taking it very slowly. I mean, they are taking the Baron, but they're more tanking the Baron than actually taking it.
Well, they will be joined here by the rest of their team. But we are going to get a replay of that team fight. Let's check out this quadra kill once again. The stun landed. They secured the blue buff, and you see that Makler actually looked to be engaged upon. Spell shielded away and got himself into a position where he wasn't in any danger anymore. Kubon picks up the first kill for his quadra and the second pretty quickly. And then it's just clinical to get over the wall here with the slice. Spear landed by Chuyu, and it looked like actually the AoE damage from the Sunfire Cape and Dominus as well picked up that quadra kill. So just clinical play out by Kubon.
Yeah, it was like 2 fights up there, but because they used Fresh to drag him back into the other fight after he'd won the other one, allowed them to also win the kind of micro fight that was happening in the jungle, and that resulted in the quadra kill. So MeetYourMakers looking very strong in this game. Baron is up for them, so is the inhibitor being down from Inferno, and they just have a huge momentum swing. This is Inferno honestly getting to a more desperate stage in the game. They're trying to find themselves picks. They're unable to group as 5 and go for a push. They have to try and get what they can.
The problem is, who do they pick? It's so difficult for them to get one pick here that Kubon's really the only one that they can pick, and he's Renekton.
Yeah.
He's 9-1. So we already discussed picking Libic isn't the biggest effect on the game. Like, not to say Libic isn't having an effect. He's setting up some amazing team fights. It's just that on his own, he doesn't provide potency. He's needed in that 3-man, and he can easily be replaced by either Chuyu or Kubon in a defensive position. Kubon's probably the only champion, the only player in this game that they can pick, and it has a big effect.
Well, here's the stack, and he will jump onto Kubon. He is so tanky. He basically tanked all of those ultimates from Inferno, and he had burnt everything on that tank. Again, the repel comes up, but there is nowhere to go. 1 kill comes down for a piece for these teams. The box comes out from Libic. Keeler isn't going anywhere either. Bonnie gets knocked back to his turret. That's Jungle Gragas doing so much damage with those barrels. 2-for-1 trade, and this tower's surely going to fall.
And I didn't quite have time to say it, but it's going to take a lot to kill Kubon.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy. There's going to have to be a lot of ultimates burst, and he's not going to be in a position to get caught. They got the pick on him, sure, but with the rest of the team there, that's not a pick. That's just a team fight that Kubon's going to engage by standing there and taking all of your ultimates and letting you get cleaned up afterwards.
Yeah, Kubon won that fight by standing still and doing nothing. And you cannot focus down the 9-2-5 Renekton. That caster minion is quite dead.
Yeah, he's pretty dead. You can't focus him down in a team fight like that. Not when there's an 11-3 Sivir alongside Chuyi, who's outputting quite a bit of damage at this point. So really just what do Inferno have to do here to get back in these team fights? MYM are just looking, once again, consistent as MYM. This is a very big change from game number 1.
It's clear that Inferno have the damage. We saw that from the last team fight because they went onto Renekton. Okay, it took them half a century, but they did manage to take him down. But if they can take Renekton down, they can kill anyone else.
Yeah.
So if they do land a good initiation, a good solar flare into someone like Sivir, that's where they can go after. But that's never going to happen. The formation from MeetYourMakers is so slick. We can see exactly why they were a former LCS team.
Not only that, Sivir has Spell Shield already, also has had a Quicksilver Sash for a good 10 minutes now. It's something that hasn't needed to be mentioned because, apart from in that fight, hasn't had to be used at all. So they've had a really good set of items here to make sure they don't get locked down.
And honestly, there's the Quicksilver Sash is just there to, if Makler misses the spell shield, it's like, oh, well, I'll click the the Quicksilver Sash and I'm great. But the top tower is going to be falling down, and there's no way this is going to be contested by Inferno. Those outer turrets are not worth very much, especially when those inhibitor turrets are also paper to the team of MeetYourMakers.
And there's a big stack heading through in the bottom lane. That inhibitor is down, so this is where really MYM will just push through the top lane as 5. There's not really any need to do much else unless they choose to take the middle inhibitor, which is, by the looks of it, what they're going to do, which will put even more pressure here on Inferno. Inferno can't really fight this one. Ooh, just forced to dash out from that spear. Solar Flare lands.
Yu actually gets locked down. That's a more squishy target, but there's only 2 members on Yu. He finally dropped, but Kuban has already destroyed the back line. Bonnie has gone down, and they have very limited damage. Dr. Matt gets called out. He just gets completely locked down, and Makler just sweeps up that kill. Now it's just clean up on aisle 3 for Meet Your Makers. It's just a matter of catching up to these guys, and this could be the game here, Stress.
There's so many minions on the Nexus already, and with more pushing in and 3 members of Inferno already down, a Nexus turret already fell during that team fight. There was no way Inferno could fight that because Kuban just had too much health at the end of the fight. Keeler's going to try and stop them, but they're not going to stop Makler there. MYM will even this best of 3 series up here 1 game apiece.
Okay, so very shortly we will be jumping into the 3rd and final game of this best of 3, and this is only the first matchup we have today, Stress. Still got another 3 matchups after this one.
Yeah, I cannot wait for the rest of our games for today, but we are going to get our game number 3 underway in just a few minutes, so we're going to head to a very short break. Stick with us here for the FACEIT Challenge.